what's up, everybody? Clayton and Stephanie gets here for another episode of Proximity Podcast, where each week we are unpacking the importance of getting in the room with men and women that are where you want to be, and we hope to bring you as many inspiring conversations and people as we possibly can, people that have impacted us, people that continue to inspire us. And we just met a couple last night that we're hoping to have on in the next couple of weeks that we believe are going to really inspire you. And so we're going to kick this off today with the importance of proximity and what it means to spend time with people that are truly on another level. And you know, again, you have to be really intentional about, you know, getting around people that are just doing things
at a higher level,
at a much higher level. Like you gotta get uncomfortable. Sometimes you gotta write a check. We've written a bunch of checks over the years, and we'll continue to write a bunch of checks to have proximity to those people, because you can condense time, you can collapse time, right, by getting around those people. So I had an opportunity a few years ago to get in a room with a young man named Don Wenner. And Don Wenner is the owner today of DLP Capital. I think, you know, one of the really impressive things about Don is he's 37 years old. And Don is a billionaire today at age 37. His capital company manages roughly $5 billion worth of capital, about 45 to 50,000 units, all up and down the Sun Belt. And he's doing it the right way. Just an amazing, father, husband, leader. And so I wrote a check. My business partner and I wrote a check for $50,000 to be a part of his mastermind for a year. And then we wrote another check for $50,000 to be a part of his mastermind for a second year. And that's how serious we are about this topic, and really why we wanted to bring this podcast to you. So, I came home after one of these events, and after sitting down with Don, and Don asked me this question. And I'm gonna pose this question to our listeners right now. And I mentioned this to Stephanie when I got back from this event. So Don said, I'm sitting down one-on-one, myself, my business partner, and Don. And he said, "All right, gentlemen, where do you want to be 100 years from now?" And John and I, my business partner, looked at each other and we're like I'm 48. I think John's like 49 or something. And we were like, hopefully with Jesus, but unless technology really changes, we're not gonna be here. And Don said, no, you misunderstand me. What kind of a legacy are you building? What kind of a legacy do you want to leave? Like, what kind of an impact do you want to have on your children's 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 children, right? It could go on in perpetuity. And what's so cool about that is it led Stephanie and I to, like, once you start thinking in terms of 100 years out, and then you just deconstruct from there.
Instead of just when we're going to retire, which is what most people do.
Right. Well, and most people, frankly, aren't going to be able to retire.
That's right.
Because they're just, they're not being intentional now about what it's going to take. They're not planning for the future.
They're not even thinking about tomorrow.
And so, and we were behind on that.
Yes.
to some degree. Well, we're behind on it now because we have bigger legacy.
Now we do.
We have bigger plans, right? And so, I think we've also discovered, honey, that when you start thinking in terms of generational impact, it makes what you do today matter that much more.
Yes.
And the moves that you make are they're bigger, right? They're just bigger, and they become more important. So I think about one of the books that we read, What Would the Rockefellers Do, that kind of came out of this process. And so do you want to just talk about how surprised we were at the whole
life insurance,
the whole life insurance piece, and how people have talked to us about life insurance in the past? Why don't you talk about that?
So one of the things that came out of this book, What Would the Rockefellers Do, was the importance of, well, I guess I should start with the difference between the premise of the book, which is that the Vanderbilts and the Rockefellers were the two wealthiest families during their time, correct? They were there at the same time.
Yeah.
To date, the Rockefellers still have a ton of family wealth like, I don't know how much they have.
Generational wealth. And
Generational wealth.
And they're still
It's still growing.
feeding.
They're still feeding.
Generations, right?
Right. And they still have lots of money because of how they designed their legacy plan. They still have lots of money left over that their kids can continue to, and grandkids can continue to benefit from. Whereas the Vanderbilts, they did not set up their funds well. And so they're out of money. They have no more money.
They essentially created trust fund. We've all heard of the trust fund babies and that term. So the big distinction is that the Rockefellers, and again, like we'd never really unpacked this, right? So the Rockefellers had a bunch of tools that they at their disposal. One of the tools that we hadn't considered previously was whole life insurance, right? So, and by the way, we're not life insurance reps.
No.
Like, so you do your own diligence here, and so we're just telling you kind of what we went through and what we've discovered. So previously, the people that were talking to us about life insurance were. We got term life insurance, of course.
Well, it was our insurance agent whom we'd had for years.
It was our insurance. That's right. But it
And
was also Dave Ramsey.
Right. Dave.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it was also Dave Ramsey.
But the insurance guy, so there's two things here. I know that that Dave Ramsey is not a whole life insurance fan, and we did Dave Ramsey. And we're fans of his. We're still fans of his.
Absolutely.
He believes in being debt free. We read his book, Total Money Makeover. We followed the steps. We paid off all of our debt, including our mortgage, and twice. 4 or 5 years. Then we went and bought a bigger house and did it again. Yep. But doing that had allowed us to, that's why we are where we are now. However, Dave Ramsey and some other folks like him, like Susie Orman, they have other philosophies, though, that I believe once you get to a certain point with your wealth building journey, their practices may not serve you as well as using some other practices that other people talk about, such as this whole life insurance. So Dave Ramsey was an anti whole life insurance. But as we've learned more, and what they talk about in this book is that with term life insurance, only 1%. This
is crazy.
Of term life insurance is actually, what do you call it? Realized. Actually happens.
So
1%.
Which is crazy, because it was such an easy, because we were Dave Ramsey kind of fanatics at the time.
Right.
It was so easy when we sat down with our life insurance agent and he was talking to us about term, and term is cheap, right?
Yes,
especially if you're healthy, it's very cheap
compared to whole life, for sure.
And so it was a very easy decision for us to say, heck yeah, Dave Ramsey said we should do this. But now after reading this book, we realized that only 1% of term policies are actually executed, are realized, right? That's crazy. So you're basically throwing money away. Whereas whole life insurance, it's there. It's just there. It doesn't, with term, it's called term because it terms out at some. It's typically 30-year term. So after 30 years, if it's not executed, it becomes completely unreasonable to keep that policy. So most people shut it down. Most people shut it down well before the 30 years, apparently, which is why only 1% are realized. So what we brought out of this was, reading this book and speaking with other people that are utilizing this tool, including the Rockefellers, is you can actually use a whole life insurance policy as a family bank. And this was the big aha for us.
Yes.
All right. So we went out and took out a policy, a very large policy on Stephanie, because she's much healthier than I am. And and it takes time to season. So let's say you have a $10 million whole life insurance policy, and it's going to take you about 10 years to season. So it's much better if you can. Whole life insurance is more expensive than term.
Yes.
Right. So it's better that if you can, you want to, you could do this when you're younger. If I could go back and have someone explain this to me, because in the past, when our agent would talk to us about whole life insurance, it always felt like a money grab.
Yes.
It just felt like a money grab.
Because they never explained.
They never. If you would have just given me this book
Right.
for $10, I would have, I would have signed up for it.
Yes.
So it's more expensive, but after it seasons for a period of time, let's call it 10 years, then you can borrow not from, here's the key, but against. And what that means is, as long as you pay the bank or the policy back prior to executing said policy, then the amount that you can actually realize doesn't decrease. You're borrowing, against, not from. So in 10 years from now, when our policy has seasoned, matured, and our girls want to buy a house, our daughters want to buy a house, for example. I'll give you this example and we'll move on. So instead of going to a Wells Fargo or a Bank of America or whatever, right, they can come to us and say, hey, I need a loan for $300,000. And we can say, and listen, here's the thing too, you can structure it in such a way that your kids have to be productive human beings,
yes.
right? We're not creating trust fund babies here. They have to be productive human beings, right? So we can have all those stipulations in the will, for example, because you want your money to last, generational wealth. So I want to borrow $300,000 from the family bank, right? Great. Well, you're going to pay us back, right? We're going to have a mortgage with the family bank, and you're going to pay the family back a mortgage payment monthly at the current interest, whatever the interest rates are at that time. They're going to pay the family bank back. That is why, it's one of the reasons why the Rockefellers are continuing to provide, resources to generations of Rockefellers, and the Vanderbilts are not.
Yeah, because, and what's really cool, I think, is the children, the grandchildren, they are incentivized to pay that money back with the interest because they're growing their own bank for future reference. So the money, of course, with the extra interest, it just continues to grow.
It's a great point.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're excited about paying that because it's their bank.
They're literally investing in their own bank. Yeah. It's brilliant. So if you're listening to this podcast and you're an insurance agent and you sell life insurance,
just go buy like 100 of those books and hand them out.
Real.
Like it's like, come on, man.
Yeah.
But anyway, so got a little sidetracked there. But so we're sitting down with Don, and Don's like, where do you want to be 100 years from now? And we're like, what the heck? And he says, well, he explains what that means. And then he says, let's deconstruct it. Okay. So I want to unpack for you kind of what it looks like for a billionaire to do legacy planning. Okay, so we basically just took his what he calls a personal compass, and it's what Stephanie and I use today for our family, what my business partner is now using for his family, and we're gonna give it to you today. So, you want to make sure that you're covering the key foundational areas of your life. Most people don't think about their faith, their family, their fitness, their finance, their fulfillment, their freedom, their friends, and their fun, in terms of being specific about what are the one or two things in each of these areas that are really going to move the needle for you and for your family. Like what's the thing spiritually that you can do each and every day that if so by doing everything else becomes easier or unnecessary? That's from Gary Keller's book called The One Thing, The Focusing Question. What is the one thing that you can do with your fitness or your health today, each and every day, that if so by doing everything else becomes easier or unnecessary? You can plug that into each of these key components. They're called the 8 F's. And so Darren Hardy talks about in his book, High Performance Habits, that having specific and difficult goals actually increase performance and satisfaction. Honey, say that one more time because it's really important.
Having specific and difficult goals increases performance satisfaction.
One of the things that we've learned, one of the things that we've learned is that when we set really big targets or really big goals, like if you shoot for the stars, you land upon the what?
If you shoot for the stars, I think you're saying it wrong. The moon?
The moon, yeah. You shoot for the stars, sorry, and you miss. You're right.
I was like, I think you're saying
You're confused, confused me. I was like, well, come on, honey.
Like, I don't think you're saying.
You shoot for the stars and you miss.
Even if you miss, you'll still
land upon the moon.
Shoot for the moon, and if you miss, you'll still land amongst the stars.
No, that's not it, Tim. It's shoot for the stars. The stars, honey, the stars are higher than the moon. Yes, the stars are like. Yeah.
So did I say it wrong?
You said it wrong. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. You said it wrong. You shoot for the stars, you miss, you land upon the moon, right? Right. So the whole point is you want to set really big goals. Most of us just don't think big. One of the things that I was I can't remember who we were listening to, honey, but it was the difference between millionaires and billionaires. The biggest difference between millionaires and billionaires is billionaires say no a whole lot more. And I'm amazed actually at how Don Wenner is so focused on the one thing professionally that he removes all other distractions. Like it's not easy, as you can imagine, to get on Don's calendar. We're hoping to have him on the podcast at some point. So Don, if you're listening, we'd love to have you. But he says no to anything that's not in alignment with the things that he targeted in each of these areas. There's actually a really cool story about Richard Branson, who was another billionaire that I believe we've talked about before, where Richard was approached to do a speaking engagement. And the guy was basically like, hey, what's it going to take? He was talking to Richard's people. Richard's people were talking to this guy's people. And he said, what's it going to take? And Richard's people came back and said, Richard has 3 main priorities this year, and speaking for you is not one of them. And the guy was good. So he sends his people back and he's like, well, listen, $1 million for an hour of his time. We'll fly him, we'll fly him private. He owns airlines, so that probably was an issue. But, we'll make sure he gets here. We'll pay for everything. $1 million for 1 hour, for 1 hour of speaking. Like most millionaires would be like, sign me up, I'm in, right? So his people came back to him again and said, Richard has 3 main priorities this year, and speaking for you is not one of them. So they went back one more time and said, what is it going to take? We want Richard at this event. And they came back again and said, Richard Branson has three main priorities this year, and speaking for you is not one of them, right? That is focus. That is focus. So having specific and difficult goals increases performance and satisfaction. So, why don't you take that one, honey?
Yeah. So with your personal compass, what it's helping you to do is to take each of those 7 areas and getting very clear on each of them. Because here's the other mistake most people make. We tend to think of goal setting in regards to our business or our finances even, but we don't tend to take the time or even think it's that important to set goals in all those other areas. For instance, the family, the fitness, the fulfillment, the freedom, the friends, and the fun. We don't think about, and then the faith. We don't think about setting goals in those areas. Here's why it's important, because if you think of each of those areas as circles around the big circle, if any of those areas are flat, so if Clayton and I's marriage is not doing well, you better believe that's going to spill over into his business, my business, our family, our fun, our fitness. It affects every single aspect around the circle.
And man,
affects
it's so much
the
easier.
other.
And we have a great marriage.
We have a great marriage.
We had a great marriage last night. Didn't we? Didn't we? Should we cut that?
So it is so important that you take the time to spend on all of those areas to make sure that your life is full. And the other thing that we have in going through this practice, and I'll say something else that has been special for us, is that we take the time to do this exercise together. And so by doing it is marriage building for several reasons. One, it keeps us in alignment with each other. He may share goals that I didn't even know he was thinking about.
And vice versa.
And vice versa. Yeah. And so we can then also be more encouraging and supportive of one another as well, just because we're both paddling in the same direction.
So it's so important for couples to get on the same page with this sort of thing, for sure, with everything, but certainly this sort of thing.
So if you don't know where you're going, you just might end up there. So we have to know, what's our end game goal? What do we want our marriage to look like in 50 years? Where do we want our faith to look like? What do we want our finances, that generational wealth, to look like, 100 years from now? And so we really want to be intentional about planning all of that out.
Yeah. So as we kind of unpack this here, and again, this is Don Wenner's system. Like this is what the billionaire goes through every year, twice a year.
So if it's good enough for a billionaire,
he might do this. He might actually do this quarterly. So
he probably does.
Most of us have core values for our businesses. We have a mission statement for our business. Why don't we have core values for our family, right? And until I sat down with Don, we didn't have core values for our family. So we didn't have a family mission statement, for example. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples from ours, and you guys can kind of fill in the blanks on your end if you want to. So just to start this process, you want to come up with a filter, right? So when our girls walk out the door in the morning, we want they represent us. They represent our family name. So what does it mean to them? Like, what's important to us? So let me give you some examples. Family first, right? So our family comes first. We don't sacrifice time with our family for work. That's one. Service to others, right, is another core value. Being present, something that we definitely struggle with, which is why it's a core value for us. Being faith-centered is a core value for our family. And having an impact on other people. I don't really stand for, I was picked on when I was a little awkward when I was younger, maybe a lot awkward, but I don't stand for that with our girls, right? So, when they're out there, it's the filter, right? I want them having a positive impact. I want when people walk away from having a conversation with them, an interaction with them, I want them walking away feeling really good about that, right? Which is why it's core value. It's a compass, if you will. And then a family mission statement. So whatever is important to you and your family, you want to fill that in, right? So our family mission statement is we are a Christ-centered family and strive to treat others with love. There it is. Compassion, respect, and generosity. We give back to our communities and are always looking for ways to serve others. We believe in always looking for opportunities to grow and learn so that we may better serve our family, friends, and our community, right? So,
the next aspect of your personal compass is your personal mission statement, basically. Your personal mission is a representation of the principles that you live by, what defines who you are as a person, and what you want to do. So I'll give an example of Clayton's personal compass. His is to embrace challenges with a growth mindset and continue to grow as a believer, a husband, a father, and a friend, to leave an impact on the organizations and people that he's blessed to have a relationship with. The next part of this personal compass is the BHAG, which is the big, hairy, audacious goal. And we certainly have a BHAG for sure right now.
And I'm big and hairy. So.
But that is your long-term goal. It should be tangible and challenging goal that energizes you. And I would say measurable too, right?
Yep.
That you can
Yep.
measure along the way.
Yep.
An example of our BHAG is that we want to own 500 doors in 7 years.
7 years from now. Yeah.
And that's a very big goal.
Well, and here's what I think is so important about that, honey, is we have no idea how we're going to do that.
Yeah.
But it's, again, we just talked about shooting for the stars, landing on the moon. So what if we end up at 300 or 200?
Still amazing.
Right? We're going to go for 500,
yeah.
right? And it's, but here's what's cool. The only way right now, the only way that we can think of to get to that target is to raise capital. And so, we're already working on what that's going to look like behind the scenes to go acquire 500 doors. We're going to have to go raise some private capital, right? And we have relationships with people that are already doing that. Don Wenner is one of them. But if we could go in 7 years, we could easily go buy, 40, 50 doors. We could do that. That wouldn't be a problem, right? Based on where we are today. But 500. So the point is, if you're serious about, growth and serious about stretching yourself, and then put something out there that is going to make you be like, how the heck are we going to do that?
Yeah. Well,
right?
and because what's really cool too about this, whenever you do your goal setting, and these types of exercises, when you state a goal, the amazing thing about our brains is that subconsciously it starts to try to figure out how to make that happen.
If you're committed to it.
If you're committed to it, that's right.
Yeah.
And so by writing it down, inking it out, stating it out loud, as we have here today, you're setting the intention, and you'll start to figure it out. And what else is really cool too is you'll start to be connected to the people that are where you want to be and are probably doing that.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah.
We're being very intentional right now because that is our BHAG.
Yes.
We're being very intentional about getting in the room with people that can help us accomplish that goal.
Yes.
About hiring coaches. We had
Networking.
a call this week. We've got another call in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
We've got, we're looking at joining an organization that can help us accelerate. So,
yes.
Yeah, that's it. And again, like other doors open too when you hang
Yes.
out with people that are like thinking at this
Yes.
level. It's incredible. And what's so cool about this, honey, is when we met, neither one of us were thinking like this, right? And it's proximity, right? It's
Yeah.
just we got in a room. We're like, holy cow! And once you
continue
catch
to get in the room.
right, but once you get in the room, the right room, you're gonna want more. You're gonna want more.
Well, because a lot of times getting in the room with people who are living at a higher level than you are, it highlights oftentimes how small you're thinking. You might not even realize you're thinking small. We've thought that before. Like, man, I thought we were doing pretty good. Thought we were like on a good track until we got in the room with these people, and we're like, gosh, you know what? We're not thinking big enough. You weren't even thinking about 100 years from now. We were just thinking about how we were going to retire comfortably and leave something for our kids, and so now we're thinking much bigger than that. So what do you want to be remembered for? That's the last piece of this part. Can
I touch on something here?
Yeah.
This is I have somebody that's a family member that is very ill right now. And, I know, because he's said as much to me, but I just know that at the end of the day, and we're all going to get there, right? The biggest regret that almost all people have at the end of their lives is what they didn't do. Right, the things that they missed, didn't spend enough time with the kids, didn't spend enough time, not at work, didn't spend enough time just going for it. Like, what could I have done, man? Like, this is it, and what could I have actually done had I just pushed myself a little bit more? That's the biggest regret from people that are, when they reach the end. So I think this is a really important question.
So what, if you haven't thought about this already, what do you want to be remembered for? When your family, friends, community think about you, what do you want them to say? So an example of what Clayton has written down is honoring God, being an amazing father and husband that models the qualities that my girls should look for in their husbands, to be the one that paved the way for future generations to be encouraged to chase their dreams, give back, serve, and love others. And I will say, just being his wife, that he is definitely doing that.
Oh,
for sure.
And you left out the last part.
That's all I see.
Being a really amazing lover.
That's definitely not on here.
It's not. I'm adding it. That's. I want to be remembered for that. I can't wait until we're 90.
Oh my God.
Together, seriously. Be chasing. We talk about this all the time. Like, when the kids are gone, how are you going to handle me?
Oh my gosh.
Like, because there are no more excuses. The excuses are gone at that point. Oh, you're in so much trouble. All right, so faith. You good, honey? Mm-hmm. All right, so next, and we'll try to, Tim. I guess we can try to. I'll give you the slides, and so people can kind of follow along with this a little bit as well, and we can even, I guess, can we attach this? Yeah, we might be able to link this for you so you guys can download this on your end. So a faith or spiritual statement. So whatever that means for you, right? For us, it's kind of what keeps us grounded and focused and what truly matters the most, right? So for us is that we honor the Lord in all that we do. We treat others with love and respect. We forgive even when it's hard, more so when it's hard. Mm-hmm. More on that in just a second. We look for ways to give back and to serve our community. So again, it's just amazing how God works, because as we, I wrote this down like 2 years ago, but we've been through a situation, and I wrote that down with
that in mind,
certain people in mind,
mm-hmm.
And haven't gotten to a place where I was ready to forgive mm-hmm. and forget until, this week actually. It actually happened for me. And so that's just how powerful this stuff can be. Mm-hmm. When you really start processing it and thinking about these things and the importance of them. So anyway, verse or quote of the year. So faith spiritual statement, whatever that means for you, verse or quote of the year. So this is something that, I love. I mean, I've always been a big fan of Jim Rohn and the Zig Ziglars and just the Tony Robbins and just all the greats, right? And they've got some really, really powerful quotes. But I picked one from Romans 5:3 because this one has always stood. It's just always stood out to me. So Romans 5:3 says, "Not only that, but we rejoice in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope. And hope does not put us to shame because God's love has been poured into our hearts through the Holy Spirit who has been given to us." Now, I'm probably totally misrepresenting this, but to me, that just speaks to what we all go through. It's why I love this verse so much, just the trials and tribulations, and how that if we can approach them with joy and character and hope and then that strengthens us. It's like a muscle, right? So I've just always loved that. And then lastly, 3 non-negotiable 3-year goals. And these are the goals that when you write them down, they're happening. And I think it's the important piece too here, honey, is that don't do this unless, and we're not great about this. It's something that we need to do better. If you're looking at this once a year, if you just write this down, things are going to start happening in your life. Promise that, you're going to be in a different place 12 months from now by just going through this exercise. If you look at this every day, not study it, but look at it every day. And so that you're reminding yourself of, one of my 3-year non-negotiables is to be in the best physical shape of my life in the next 3 years, right? And I put a weight to that. And I'm not there yet. To acquire my pilot's license and a plane. What? Okay, that was crazy at the time when I wrote it down. And to circumvent the Eastern Inland Waterway on our boat. We're going to need a bigger boat, honey. But that's a fun process to go through. So, honey, why don't you take us into the next one?
Yeah. So the next one is all about your inner circle. This is again going back to our podcast here, proximity. You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, and so it's really important to have a good filter about who you are letting into that circle. And so, so this is just an exercise for you to write down. Okay, who are the people, it'll have you start with your family inner circle. So your inner circle of family members are the most impactful members of your family who you love unconditionally, or vice versa. And so we have those names written down. And then the next part is your friends inner circle. Your inner circle of friends is comprised of trusted individuals who provide a good influence over your life and contribute to your success. So a good question, I think, to ask yourself as you're going through this is, when I spend time with this person, do I like who I am? Do I show up as the best version of me when I'm around them? Does this person challenge me in a good and positive way? One great thing for, thankfully throughout my life, I have always had really great friends, and I've had the kind of friends where, if I lost my mind or, started doing something crazy, they would call me out. Yeah. They would be like, "What are you doing? Yeah. Were you crazy? Have you lost your mind?" They would call me out on that. And that's really good. We should all have that level of accountability in our life. And frankly, I think we need it. It kind of keeps us in line. And then the third category is your board mentors and or coaches. These are the people who keep you in check, balanced, and help you to continuously grow. So oftentimes, and Clayton and I have done this throughout our professional careers, is sometimes it's worth it to write a check for that coach, because when you're spending your own money, you're going to be sure you show up. You're going to put more intentionality behind the activity that helps you to grow. If you're willing to put some skin in the game. Yep. Exactly. Yep. And so this is just an exercise to help you run through those very, very important circles in your life to make sure that you're staying on track.
Yep. Yeah. And then, so the next step is to define your strengths and your weaknesses. We've all got them. So, your strengths are, think about what you're strongest at and focus on those areas.
And I'm going to put a little plug here. Yeah. So there's a really great book called Strength Finders 2.0. And if you're struggling to know what your strengths are, you have to buy this book because what's really interesting is I took the test and it's when you buy the book, it's going to come with it comes a free assessment that you log onto, and there's a code at the back of the book you can enter. And you take the test is meant to be taken rapid fire. So you're not supposed to sit on the questions that if you sit too long, it actually times out and goes to the next question. It wants your gut instinct reaction. It's actually a questionnaire put out by Gallup. When you're finished, it assesses what your 5 core strengths are. What's really cool is some of my strengths I never even looked at as a strength. But as I read the descriptions of my top 5 strengths, it definitely spelled out and sounded exactly like me to a T, but also it helped me to better understand myself and also embrace things that I didn't even realize were strengths, but now I see them as what they are. So I just wanted to give a plug for that.
Yep. Yeah, no, that's great. And your weaknesses, a strong individual is one who understands their strengths and weaknesses, identify the core areas of weaknesses that you feel you would like to improve on. So me and anybody that knows me knows this very well, is I'm easily distracted. I have a hard
100%.
Squirrel.
So am I, though.
I have a hard time saying no.
Yep.
Back hair. Not have back hair. And I'm inconsistent and I bore easily. So
Very
those
much.
are my
Very
weaknesses.
true.
So you just
Very
want to identify those.
Yep.
And then, honey, so this is something that we've all heard of things that we need to like start doing, right? But I think it's more important to define what we need to stop doing, right? So the evolution of this thing is you want to define what you need to start doing, and then I think more importantly, what do you need to stop doing? We all have a rock that we need to cast in our lives. Like, what is holding you back from greatness, from becoming the person that you were designed to be, from leveling up, from getting in the room, from just taking that next step, from getting unstuck, right? There's something that we all need to stop doing, and there are things that we need to start doing as well.
Yep.
And then coming up with, honey, you said this a few minutes ago, some smart quarterly rocks, some smart goals that are measurable, specific, that we can attainable, realistic, timely. It's a 3-month period, right? That are going to help you achieve these goals, right? Let's see, and then, honey, let's go to the 100-year checkpoint. It's number 14 there. Let's go to the 100-year checkpoint, and we're going to work backwards from there, and then we'll wrap up.
Okay. So your 100-year checkpoints.
This is the fun part for me.
is a plan you develop to determine what you would like to accomplish within 100 years. This is essentially the legacy you want future generations to carry on. That really gets you thinking big. So some examples from Clayton's compass are with wealth, he wants future generations' needs to be met. How cool would that be if your grandkids, their financial needs are met? Income is protected and sheltered for future generations. Impact and philanthropy. I always struggle with that word.
Yeah. Well, so back up real quick, because the income is protected and sheltered for future generations. We hadn't really thought about that.
That's what the whole life insurance is for.
And trusts and just all the things that, a family office. So we'd never thought about that before.
Never thought about that stuff.
And look, like, if you're watching this and you're like, oh my gosh, what are they even talking about? It was not that long ago where Stephanie and I were broke. I mean, broke.
Yeah.
$500,000, $530,000 in debt. What was that? Was that 2006?
I don't even know, somewhere around then.
And then it took us about 4 years. So 2009 is when we were debt free. But then it wasn't until about 2015, 2016, where things started the compound effect kicked in, right?
Yes.
But once you know how to do it, once you know how to get there in any area, right, whether it's spiritually, physically, financially, relationally, you can duplicate it, right? So and that's the importance of. So if you think you're like, whether you're just getting started on this journey or you're just get started, right?
And remember too, you're literally, because I think about being debt free, and then the other book that you mentioned, What Would the Rockefellers Do? You're only ever one book, one conversation, one relationship, one question away.
Ed Milet, The Power of One More.
Yeah,
That's
away
one book
from
right there. Yeah,
dramatically changing your life, because each of those big rocks were influenced by a book or a person or a question, or just, by getting in the room and being exposed to that stuff. So the next part, impact and philanthropy, I said it right that time. 100, his goal, our goal, I should say, is 100 million in philanthropy.
In 100 years. 100 years is a long time, right? And so, and by the way, that's part of the income protection and sheltering for future generations as well. That those two go hand in hand.
Yep. Family, living our legacy. Future generations are better off because of the way we have lived our lives. And so just putting that intentionality behind that, reminding our kids who they are when they leave. You are a child of God. You represent this family.
So
get them thinking outside themselves.
So we had, Justin Prince on our last podcast, and he was talking about his new book, Be the One. And, that's what that is about.
Yes.
Be the one that future generations look at and say, she was the one.
That's right.
She was the one that went for it. And because she was who she was, we're better off because of that.
Yeah, because they had hopefully that as a
so powerful.
role
And that's
model.
when you start thinking like this. That's when everything begins to just what we do today, who we're becoming, matters that much more. So
and then the last.
So I'm actually going to move on to 20 year.
Yep.
I'm sorry, honey.
Nope.
So the 20-year checkpoint. So you're deconstructing. So 100-year, 20-year, and then we're going to wrap up with 5-year here in just a second. So 20-year checkpoint is where do you need to be 20 years from now to be on track for your 100-year legacy plan? Okay, so 20 years from now, where do you need to be on track for your 100-year legacy plan? So again, we're going to post a link to this, but you'll be able to look at what you start with the end in mind. Okay, because if you don't know where you're going, you might just end up there. So you got that big, hairy, audacious goal 100 years from now. Well, where do you need to be in each of those categories to be on track 20 years from now? And then you just simply, work backwards to 5 years. And then you can take it down to annual, and you can take it down to quarterly, and you can even take it down to daily. What daily habits do you need to instill today that are going to start moving the needle towards making this happen, right?
So maybe when you're going, and we're going to put the link right in the notes of this podcast, you can even listen.
Tim will figure it out.
well, maybe you can even listen to this as you're going through. Pause it when you need to at each section. But yeah, it's so important to get clarity on all of this stuff and taking the time. And I will warn you, if you've never gone through this process, it is mentally draining and exhausting. But very rewarding, and it takes a lot longer than you think.
And you will need at least a day. That's a really good point.
You need a full
day. And it deserves
day.
A day or two. We take 2 days every year where we revise, right? And we need to be doing it quarterly.
Yeah.
You need to be doing it quarterly.
Yeah.
But it needs at least a day full, no distractions, no kids. Try to turn the cell phones off. And just dive deep. This is your legacy. It's your life. It's your future and your children's future and your children's future.
And I will just say this too, though. You can do this with your kids. We did it with our kids last year. Remember, we sat in the coffee shop and we had them with us, and we their goals are obviously, like right now, it might be academic types of goals versus income types of goals, but just what a blessing for your kids to do this activity with them, because if I was exposed to this at their age.
Well, and it's raising their standards,
yeah,
right?
100%.
So, we're already praying for their future, their future husbands and their standards are raised, right? And so what that means is, prayerfully, they're not going to settle. They're not going to settle for somebody that's just not worthy. That's just not worthy of who they are and who they're becoming.
Yes.
It's not easy out there from what I'm being told. I'm just glad I'm not out there. I'm glad that I'm, married up club. So what
we both are.
Yeah. What a blessing. What a blessing to, not have to, can you imagine?
No.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
We have some friends that are going through that right now that are, got a buddy that said that you're the last one. He's out there trying to date, and he's like, you got the last one, Clayton. You Yep. Let me know if anything ever happens to you, because I'm taking Stephanie. So if anything ever happens to me, we know who it was. But anyway, listen, we appreciate you guys. Hope this information was helpful. Go be intentional about getting in the room, and let's grow.